So this idea of racism was
thought
birthed there.
It was a marketing campaign.
It was a marketing campaign.
That's fucking sick.
Isn't that crazy?
But that's what I love about the fact that we're talking about this now. And even like the Black Lives Matter thing, at first I was like very into it, and then I started reading more about it, and I had to like do quite a bit of a pivot about the whole concept, because there was a lot of false narratives coming out of from all the sides. And I just had a bit more like, I took like 2 steps back. But I think it's interesting and very necessary conversations. And but what I like about that is, for long there's been this narrative that's been also sold, and it's kind of trying to correct that idea that poor Africa was just this amazing little paradise with people all innocent and just living happy lives, and these evil people came here. But that takes away the agency of the whole continent of people that lived and thrived here for millions of years, having their own kingdoms and their own power and their own, like, that's what I like about that we can now speak about narratives a bit more truthfully. That it's never just like this binary thing. Oh, evil and good. It's always a very more complex issue, and I like that we can say that. Like there's, for instance, there's this issue they called the Mfekane, that when the Voortrekkers came to the Gauteng plains, it was empty, and so they started populating it, and eventually gold was discovered and everything. I'm obviously lazing over a bunch of facts now, but to try and digest it, I have to try and compress it. But so it was a mystery. How could they? There were still signs of many civilizations here, but it was empty enough that a very small band of Buddha could kind of just live here. And for long there was this thing, no, they brutally came in, but the narrative didn't make sense, because how could a small group of people just conquer a whole like 4 or 5 tribes that lived here? It doesn't make sense. So the Mfekane story is that some massive war or something broke out, or a famine, something like obliterated a shit ton of people. But what was funny for me when I heard about the Mfekane, I was doing research for something, and there were already like scholars disputing the fact, and they were saying no, but it was only white missionaries who wrote about the idea of the Mfekane. But the moment you start digging and you go deeper into it, you have to realize it's more complex than that. Like, just having, as we said with narratives, just having a bunch of evil people come to a place and take it over can't possibly explain how things really turned out. That's the other thing with apartheid. Like, apartheid, as evil as that was, for it to have worked for as long as it did, it had to have a bunch of effective mechanisms inside of the thing. That's how, even fucking Hitler was effective at certain things. And then a whole slew of horrible things. And you have to be able to remove yourself far enough from the issue to go, I can actually learn from this, instead of burying it and like never to be spoken of like Lord Voldemort or whatever. And that's a place that I wish we can get to as a species, where we can, even the things that we hate and abhor and we completely want stopped, we should still scientifically look at it and go, but that and that and that works about it. That's why it worked. Now we understand how it worked.
It's part of the reason why, I mean, under apartheid, the South African economy did very, very well.
Yeah.
And it's not because it was a racist country. It's because we had good economic policies at the time.
And cheap labor, unfortunately.
Yeah,
that was but exactly that is like, so the cheap labor side you would take and go, okay, that thing we throw out, and this thing we throw out, that bad carburetor we throw out. But in terms of for anything to work that long, you need the buy-in of a lot of people, or at least, because if you look at it, it took that long for a revolution strong enough to overthrow it. Now, what was that? To deny that in those 50, 60 years, people were living and breathing and doing things and taking part in, or in their own little way, challenging it, you're skipping history. And I hate that these days we're trying to kind of skip history, if you know what I mean. Or it feels to me like it a bit.
I do.
Yeah.
I understand. I think it's very clever and it's very insightful to look at something as a whole, be able to emotionally remove yourself and
Yes.
say, despite the fact that I strongly disagree with this, let's break it down and let's figure out exactly what was wrong. Take that away and be left with
Yes.
the actual, good bits. And I think that's got to do a lot with polarization today.
Totally.
Is because it's so easy. I think here is a good example, but in the US it's probably the best example, is where people think, I am part of this group, I cannot agree with anything that
Yes,
person says because
exactly.
they're in the other group. And it's not like that. It's like you said earlier, where you've got the checklist of things that both sides
Yes.
agree with. They agree on 95%
Yes.
of issues. They disagree on like 3 things,
Mm.
and now they won't talk to one another.
And and I think if you look at South Africa, it's probably, there's a lot of touch points between the groups. I've always thought, you know how they do blind wine tests, where you don't know what wine you're drinking and you have to rate them. I've always thought about doing like a racial blind test, where like there's like almost like a dating show. There's like a screen and you can't see who they are, but you can ask them questions like, do you like braai and beer and all and it sounds superficial, but you can go into deeper cultural things as well. How do you feel about women? And I honestly believe that 99% of people won't be able to differentiate between an Afrikaner and a Zulu. Because they firstly, it's a bit paternalistic. They love beer, they love braai. The men need to be very like macho. There's just a bunch of cultural touchstones that we agree on. So, but we and this is interesting that what you said earlier about racism being a marketing for capital for profit. Division in modern, like today, division is also for profit, I believe, because people divided are easier to control, easier to sell things to because they're scared. Scared people are easy to do anything with, and that's why young parents, new parents, and pet owners are being fucking flogged to death because they know you have a captured market. These people are so afraid of the baby that they need to keep alive that I can charge them 15,000 rand for a fucking stroller. And the same with pets. No, you need antidepressants for your dog. You're so afraid of this little human thing. So, and that's why the way polarization is also being driven by the market, I believe, because it works. A united humanity is not going to be as easy to manipulate. No. Not that I'm not saying the lizard people are real. I'm just saying. Like that's the difference between people who deny COVID and like I accept COVID, but I also accept that it's the perfect opportunity for people in power to power grab even more because it's a emergency state of emergency.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. What is your position on how let's take just the South African government first, and then we can talk a little bit more on a global scale. What's your opinion on how it's been handled?
I believe that we softened the blow of the first wave effectively. It was shocking that the grant money was fucking stolen. But I believe that the right thing to do was a lockdown. It's even if it was just to buy us a little bit of time to prepare a bit more. Even if it was just to stitch more fucking masks. Just to... I was against most of the haphazard new legislation about, for instance, cigarettes and stuff like that. I'm not a smoker, but I couldn't understand because it's the same as keeping people that are addicted to heroin away from access to good, clean heroin. Is they're going to find it on the black market. And all my smoking friends kept smoking back alley shit that they found. Same with alcohol. It was a bit of a wake-up call to see how much of an alcohol problem we have as a country.
It's a really big problem.
It's a problem.
No, I agree with you.
And whether being a nanny state is the answer, I'm not sure. But since then, I don't know. I'm frustrated with the whole situation, but I'm not. I look at the government and I'm like, I don't think you're perfect at what you're doing, but it looks like you're trying. But it's what's been done to small businesses is a massive fuck up, and I don't know how we're going to recover from that. And I'm not smart enough economically to say how we should have done it differently. Because people keep spouting the Swedish model. It's not. This thing is not over, and you can't. A lot of Swedish people are saying it's not. It wasn't the best thing to do, and I think America is the other extreme where they're in an interesting situation because half of the country refuse to wear masks. And look how it's going there. So the mask has to have some effect. But they've long not been the United States of America. They're like two countries that are kind of like that. But it's two countries with two completely different outlooks on life. We have, I guess, 11, 12, 60 different visions of life. But yeah, what's your opinion of how it's been handled?